I'm introducing to you a panel which is dealing with the urban issue, coming from the regulatory framework down to the local level. As already in the last panel mentioned, and also the Secretary of the ITF mentioned, we have a larger framework for the story. We have a framework which is about the future of the cities, which is about quality of life in cities. And quality of life, that's what the elected politicians in our states are responsible for. Innovation mostly takes place at local level, and that's why also, even though it's a global event, I mean, it's happening in a city, which is a real city and which is happening. You have here people from very different sectors, and that's the complicated message of the team here. We have people from cities like Transport for London, from Lauren, and we have people from tech companies, from mapping, from Mobile Isle, and maybe you just say your name and your function. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Barth. I run business development at Mapbox. We're a location-based platform.
Nisa Moyal from Mobileye, Director of Business Development and Smart City and Big Data.
Hi, I'm Oren Shoval from VIA. I'm a CTO, and we've built a platform for dynamic public transportation.
I'm Lauren Sager-Weinstein. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Transport for London, and we oversee mobility and strategic initiatives for getting people around London, and we also run services.
I'm Lu Haifeng from SAIC Group in China, and the SAIC Group is the biggest car maker in China. We produce around 6.7 million vehicles yearly, and we're just a newcomer here in Israel.
Yes, the task of this panel is to discuss a little bit about the question, what is smart urban mobility? I think if you talk about smart, it's clear, first of all, it's not about technology, it's about people. You should be smart, we should be smart here. That's maybe part of the story. Mobility clearly is not transportation, but it's mobility. It's human behavior. And I think we have exactly a nice mix of people here on the stage who can talk about that. And then in cities, it's really happening in cities, and I'm asking 1-2 questions later on to which cities we should look at, where are really the problems that we are facing. Just to make the reality check here in the audience, who did come by private car this morning? Please raise up your hands. Okay, who of you was on time and on your schedule? Almost nobody, okay. I think there's something to do, and I think we have some solutions here on the platform how to talk about that. So I think it's about people, and there's a lot about human behavior. So that, I think, is a very important start. Would you say that your company makes a contribution to what you think that cities face in the world, and what is your contribution? What would you say is your offering?
So a big part about what we do is we offer like smart routing services to our customers, right, and ride-sharing, logistics, and so forth. Our customers look for like smarter ways to get through cities. So like the more information we have about, congestion pricing, for instance, like in London, or like sort of special smart like toll charges that regulate traffic in cities. The more we know about that, the more out of the box we can offer to our customers like routing services that are meaningful and that avoid the things that cities want to see less of in their environments. So they're very clearly, I think there's an opportunity for for cities to leverage companies like us or sort of the larger data ecosystem to sort of publish their data and their regulations in a smart way so that they're immediately actionable for a broad audience.
So Lauren, from a perspective of London, from Transport for London being an organization of the Greater London Authority, could you break down the challenges that we have, that we all know at global level, and the next COP is going to happen in 10 days in Bonn on behalf of the Fiji Islands, and there people from all sectors are gathering, and everybody knows that the transport sector is the sector that has the most still to decarbonize, but not only to decarbonize, but we have other sustainable development goals which are more affecting the economy and, let's say, the real life of people in cities. Could you break down that to London? What are the challenges and how would you address them to your colleagues right and left who are offering you some products?
Well, the way that I see it is that we need to look with two different frames. So we need to start off by saying strategically, where are we going? And in London, the mayor's published a draft transport strategy that sets out a vision of where we want to go to, which for us is increasing mode share in public transport and in sustainable modes in walking and cycling. Now, already in London, we're at 64% of journeys that are done by these sustainable modes, but we want to see 80%. And why? This is so that we can sort of cater for a growing city. We're already 8.7 million of us in London, and that number is set to grow. And with that growth, if we don't manage it properly and sustainably, we risk having lots of congestion, so people won't be able to get to where they need to get to. And if that happens, then there's a huge drain on the economy. The economy just can't grow and support when you have all this congestion. And then, of course, we're very, very concerned about air quality and pollution. We want to have a healthy city with healthy streets. So that sets out an overall sort of target and vision, and we need to sort of work together to how do we get there, all of us. And then you say, sort of in the short term, how can we use technology and innovation to help? And what's our direction with that? And that is where I think, starting from what we want to achieve, it sort of sets out what the problems are and what the long-term and short-term problems are. And then for us, in terms of how we've worked with the tech community, is one of the things that we've done is we have taken our data sets, and we have about 80 different data sets in a unified API that developers can come and subscribe to, and then promote information about our services. And that's a huge benefit for us, because we are conveying information about the city and about our services, and it's a huge boon to customers and Londoners and visitors, and it's a benefit to the tech community itself. And we've measured the economic value of that, and so that's sort of where I would say there's a win-win partnership here when you're thinking about technology.
Oren, you're making services which might be interesting for cities. I think some of the cities have adapted that. You're in contact with many other places in the world. What would you say is the important point that you are interested in a city to cooperate? Would you react on tenders? Would you react on your own research? Would you react on a development cooperation?
So our vision is that it's not one size fits all. So some cities, we apply to RFPs and actually winning them to promote and provide a city with both affordable, dynamic, and efficient mobility. An operating system for on-demand shuttles, so just to explain what VIA does in just one sentence. A fleet of shuttles, maybe 8-10 seats, maybe 1,000 of those crisscross the city. Every given moment they're controlled by a central optimization software, and you just book a ride on your phone, and that shuttle, or basically minibus or a bus, picks you up at a corner nearby and takes you to a corner near your destination, just like a bus picks up and drops off other people on the way. But the routing is completely dynamic and computed in real time according to the demand, predicted demand, traffic condition, etc. So we're helping cities use data in real time to optimize basically a public transit system which has been insulated from technology for many decades. And with some cities, we are able to provide the technological platform, just a software as a service, for the city to operate its own buses. In some cities, we can operate it for the city, just like basically an operation company. In some cities like New York City, we operate the entire value chain. We go directly to the consumer. There's a lot of value there, obviously. And I would say what is common is that we believe in working closely together and in harmony, as much as possible, with local stakeholders. So we first approach the city, see what is the city interested in that. What we're seeing is the cities are more and more interested in these new IT technologies. In some locations we might provide technology, some places we can operate, and we are open to all of these options.
I think the interesting thing that you have heard also the last 2 days here is that mostly the new thing is that different sectors are growing together. The energy sector, which has been addressed by the minister that morning, the setting of the framework by local governments, the industry making products which are going to be changed, maybe not to be owned that much than before. I would be interested to have a discussion amongst you, among the the automotive industry, even though you're the research unit of those. How do you see the changing framework for your business? And how important is the cooperation with, let's say, service companies together with the automotive industry if cities would say, anyway, the goal is to reduce the number of vehicles, whatever they are, and whatever kind of propulsion they have to reduce by 30%, because we need the urban space. We want a nice public sphere there. We want better air quality, but we want also space for citizens to enjoy the city. So if there would be less cars, but the possibility to offer new services. So how would you maybe join forces when you go to, let's say, Lima, and maybe they have a real problem, more than we have in most European places? How would you maybe join forces and work together between an automotive company, a sensor company, and a service company? What would be your common offering? Or would you go one by one to the mayor and say, I have the best product?
We as Mobileye start basically by solving the world epidemic that we as society accept is accidents and people losing lives. We start with that basic problem solution. And we talk with decision makers, because the next generation of our systems and currently systems that are installed on buses can provide decision makers like in London. We have a few with a lot of information about what's happening in real time in the streets and with an accuracy of 10 centimeters. So it's not, data that comes out from phones that we deliver them. It's data that comes from our sensors, and we prevent, first of all, the accident and provide drivers in real time that solution. And we as a company, and I guess also when we work with the SIC together and also with Mapbox, we work together to understand. It's a kind of an ecosystem when you have to work together with the decision makers. In almost every city that we operate, there are regulations and rules that you have to play by them and talk with them, and of course apply tenders and all, but also push them and offer them technology that can save lives at the end.
Actually, all this is about the future. For ACIC, our strategy is the future will be connected, will be intelligent, will be sharing, will be electrified. So it will be a EV car, it will be a maybe AI vehicle. We don't know. This kind of thing we're sure, because back to Shanghai, back to China, it's a little bit different from Israel, from Tel Aviv, from London. Actually, Shanghai, you can online hire a vehicle, hire how to say, the bike, the Mobike, which is the biggest bike sharing car in the world. And actually, for ACIC, we are the conventional car maker, and we look at that. We want to see how could we survive in the future. So that's what we are doing right now. We have our own sharing car company, Beloa Group, which is EV car, and we have 10,000 vehicles on the road. We think the company is the biggest one in the world, and we are not sure if we can survive, but we want to try. So we want to move our company from a conventional car maker to a service or mobility service company. That's our strategy right now. Yeah. So that's why we work with the internet company like Alibaba, because we know that it's different from before. And what we know is we are not very familiar with the electrical, with the software, hardware, but right now we want to learn. And we are sure that the company like Google, like Apple, even Huawei, they know us, and actually they're better than us, and we want to learn from them. That's what we are doing right now. Yeah.
Alex, your company is all about maps. and maybe to come here, and everyday life maps is really a basic tool. What are maps today more, or what will maps be more in the future for citizens' life than only just to say, I'm here, I'm there? Is your part of the work going to be more at the final customer, so at the user, at the citizen, or is your business going to develop more into a B2B direction?
So yeah, we're fully B2B today, and this is also how we're reaching scale. So like if you open like Snap Maps today, for instance, the map in there that just turned like orange yesterday for Halloween, that's built with Mapbox, right? Or the maps that you see like in the Weather Channel, like the most popular like, weather app in the United States, that's Mapbox. We're fully B2B. Our customers like to tap into our maps, which by the way gives us a lot of insight on like how people and where people move in an aggregate, anonymous fashion. That in the turn is something that we offer like in our Smart Cities program, you know, working with cities like, you know, Bloomingdale in Indiana, or with the West Midlands in the UK, or with Melbourne in Australia. So the function that we're seeing here, what's increasingly happening with our maps is that the service, like the connective tissue between like, you know, players in cities, right? And I think this goes back to like what a number of people have said here already on the panel. This is about actually like connecting like all that information and having a way of sharing it in a meaningful way, right? I think there's like huge challenges ahead of us. At the same time, also huge opportunities, right? Like I think what is 50%, 55% of people in the world live in cities. It's going to be 70% by 2050. Today already like 70% of like the traffic, like vehicle miles traveled, for instance in the United States, 70% of vehicle miles traveled per year is in cities, right? So like, you know, the challenge to like preserve this planet, right? Like make sure this is a livable place for generations to come, like isn't like solving like, you know, our problems in cities, and our like transport problems in cities. So we see like the map as like, you know, the place to share the data, to make it accessible, and to scale like that access to data and information that helps us like just move smarter in this planet. Because, you know, while we can start solving the problems on a local level, we are like a global society at this point, right? Like, so if we don't figure out on how to share like in a standardized way, like that scales beyond a single city, then I don't think we'll figure it out.
Oren, you would like to add to that, or? No?
I mean, yeah, I wasn't sure which one of us. I mean, I think this is right. I think this is where you know, sort of the long term we have a direction, but in the short term, there are tactical things that we need to do to increase capacity. So to the extent that we can use data to run and operate our cities better today in the near term, and to plan ahead for how we design and how we invest in infrastructure in the future going forward, that's a real win and opportunity. And this is where we just didn't have this level of information and this level of the ability to do analysis and algorithms to understand patterns even several years ago. And it's just been a rapid change. And we've said we've seen and demonstrated the real value of being able to do this. But I would caution, because I think that we need to be careful not to get carried away. I think it's really demonstrating the tangible impacts as you go forward of what we're going to achieve from it. Otherwise, we could end up doing some really fascinating and fun and exciting from a tech perspective solutions that don't have any practicality. So I would bring it all back to having something that you can test out in a practical manner and to demonstrate an incremental improvement. And that's sort of where the real win is for everyone.
Yeah, very good point. I think if we think about cities' policies, and they all have to break down what has been decided, as it was said in the regulatory panel on COP21, Paris, and so on, the next going, we know that the very strong framework. The national governments, they have signed those bills, and now it's at local level, things have really to happen. So now we have two things. We have people elected for a limited number of years, and we have human behavior. So we have the real nature of life, and this is not always controlled by technology. I mean, why do you buy a very expensive car if you go just 5 kilometers? So it's not because you need it, but because you like to have it. So if you take the cities challenging, and I'm talking about the fast-growing big cities, those cities which are maybe not here and not in Europe, but mostly in Asia and so on, in China, in the developing world, in South America, and Africa, and some places. not only in London. I've studied that in the 90s in Norway and in Singapore. Road pricing is an issue. And yesterday in one of the panels it was said that the cities will have to introduce the one or other way in pricing the use of the road in order not only to control the general traffic flow, but even more maybe in times of automated vehicles, because let's say the specific costs of riding might even drop on the long run, and then maybe the horror scenario is that people just drive pizzas around from A to B. So you're getting more problems and not less. So we should, of course, all focus in our responsibility in different positions to say, okay, how are we going to use technology for the good? But road pricing in most places is a very hot issue, and many politicians don't like to touch on it because they think they might not be re-elected. I think in many cases it's not true. Stockholm case, Oslo, Singapore, London, and many others show that it works, and that also advanced technology can contribute to make that acceptable and also viable. So in a scenario of that, would be interesting maybe to the audience, and I'm afraid we don't have too many mayors around the world, but maybe for the after of the conference, what is your view on that, and what would be your contribution of your company towards, let's say, an intelligent road pricing system that makes it possible that those who need the road can use it, and those who maybe don't need it really, at least they pay a very high price and maybe they don't use it, at least in the wrong time?
So just to, so there's a, all these ladies know, there's a lane, you can take the bus lane into Tel Aviv with your private car and pay money. So you're allowed to go on the bus lane if you pay, and the pricing is dynamic in real time, depending on the traffic, so how much time you save, approximately, defines how much you're going to pay. So maybe to zoom out of that question, if I may, I think one of the questions is what is public transit? How do you define public transit, right? Which is related to that question. What does the city need to do? So if the vision that we all, I think, believe in is that you will not buy a car and everything will be a service, so a bus is also a service. You would never think of buying a bus, right? Or buying a subway, or digging a whole subway tunnel just for yourself. And so if you don't buy, what is the difference between, so if we operate on our own, basically one of the things we need to compete with is the subsidies that the bus system has, which is on average, globally, is 50% subsidized, which is very challenging to compete with that. Basically for the consumer, just books a seat either on a bus or on a VIA, or dynamic shuttle like what we do. So when you talk about, so one aspect is the regulation and managing the infrastructure, which is maybe road pricing. And another piece that the cities are doing, and I think will need to evolve, is do the cities provide their own service? And do constituents expect to get a subsidized service? They expect, obviously, their taxpayers, their tax money to pave the road. That goes from everybody's own tax money, but the tax money, so a lot of my tax money in Israel goes to public transit, which I barely use. You know, it's also, I think, interesting to see. And I think that will also evolve. So people will expect, I think, with these new technologies, the city to either create the ecosystem or to operate these mobility systems, either the roads themselves or the vehicles, in a much more intelligent way and efficient way that's accessible to everybody, not only to those that don't have an option to take something else.
I think it's a mixture of all. You see many solutions in cities. I'm next week in Vienna, and you see a very dynamic system there. People can buy one ticket for a year for 364 euro, and it's basically €1 a day to drive and to use the public transportation. So you can, if you see cities that are, like Tel Aviv, that are controlling the public transportation and also joining forces with drive-hailing applications or car-sharing applications, and also opening lanes for people to pay more if they would like to move with their own cars. That's all going to play in one big basket where we're all going to provide solutions. Of course, for the autonomous vehicle, it will be much more easy if there will be less vehicles or less pedestrians or cyclists like we have in London, for example. I see it kind of a mixture of all.
Does the Chinese automotive sector has a view on also the type of vehicles that might be developed in times when people and cities want that those are better occupied, that there's not one person in the car, but maybe shuttle services like just described by Via, bigger vans, different vehicle concepts?
Actually, I mentioned we have the EV card as a car sharing company, and we have the APP for that. And actually, from our study, that public transportation is not so efficient because you have redundancy when the rush hour after rush hour, the train is still going, the bus is still going around the city, but nobody in the vehicle. So that's why we have that concept, because in car maker we call it mass production, which is less flexibility. So as you mentioned that you are talking about autonomous driving, we prefer intelligent vehicle. In China right now is everything could be connected, especially everybody has this, and you don't need your wallet, you don't need everything. You can rent a car by your cell phone, you pay the money through cell phone, and actually for EV card, and we connected to all APP is connected to the public service and to the mobile, like the company mobile. You can make your itinerary, your arrangement through one APP. Right now it's not so efficient, but we are trying to do that. And it's not done by the government, it's done by the companies, startups, the company like car makers. So we are trying to do that. And for car side, it's not just a connected vehicle, it's about a connected person. And we try to provide a service to the owner or the people. And that's the basic concept behind the overall strategy. And if we want to achieve that, it's not just a government, it's not just a company, it's about all the environment. For example, if you have a connected vehicle right now, actually, I personal opinion that the only connected vehicle, true connected vehicle, maybe Tesla. It's also not so connected, because if we want to make a car like cell phone, we have to change all the WE architecture for the vehicle. We have to change lots of things, even from the chips, the basic OS, all the stacks, everything. It's not a very simple job. Right now, what we are doing is we will use this as a channel to connect the vehicle to the society, to the people, and provide a service. And we think it's a step-by-step approach. It's not so sudden happen. But in China, because we have, I'm not sure everybody has WeChat or not. If you have WeChat, you can do everything online. So that's what we want to try to do. That's what we want to try. Okay.
Yes, but still congestion is one of the biggest problems of the city. I think air quality is one, sometimes related to congestion, but congestion is the biggest single negative cost of growing cities. So I think the way of managing that, whatever you call it, is really important. Alex, do you have any experiences in cooperating with cities who are working on charging the road use, and would you cooperate them? Do you have services for them?
Yeah. So collectively, across all devices that have Mapbox embedded, we're collecting currently about 200 million miles of road per day. That's a lot of data, right? There's telemetry data that we're collecting from mobile phones that helps us build the map, build real-time traffic, and so forth. So we know a lot about where people and how people move in cities, and we make that data available to cities so that they can understand the problems better in the first place, right? Of where do we have congestion, what happens around events, where it happens around if we have road closures, if congestion opens again, how long does it take for like, you know, the road network to flush and so forth. We can look at all these things and can make this available to cities to help them understand traffic. Just recently we worked with like Washington, DC and their smart cities initiative is, by the way, like the city where we started our company. We worked with them to like help them understand better like the traffic fatalities and near crashes in the city, and they could like blend like what they understood about the traffic fatalities in their city with like the traffic information that we made available to them, so that they could like sort of have a smarter view on like, okay, where are actually the dangerous intersections in the city, and how do we spend like our very scarce resources smartest, so that we can bring down like those incidents. This would just be one example of what we do.
So last point for all of us. Yesterday evening, in the evening reception, for those who have been there, it was mentioned that the Israeli policy on what we are doing here on this summit and all the industry behind is very much oriented to global issues, to globalization, to exportation. As they, of course, say it's a small country, but a lot of ideas that you can use in many places of the world. In 10 days, I'm going to the next COP in Bonn, as I said, and I'm invited to a discussion on the so-called urban settlement negotiations of the climate summit, and I should speak on behalf of the transport sector. So that's in 10 days. And those people there, they're not talking about the places we live in except China. So what would be your wishes, and what are the things that we all should do in this sector in order to transfer this know-how and those ideas which are here on the panel to the really fast-growing places in the world where the real problems of urbanization are? I would say, yes, there is a traffic jam in Tel Aviv, but compared to what you might see in some other places, it can be worse. Those are the fast-growing cities. So when somebody said, from the colleague from Göteborg, regulation, and we should look ahead, also the Polish minister, we should look ahead what's happening. How would you like to act, and what is your contribution to the growing problems of the growing cities in the world? And I would include London, saying, what would your know-how be for them? So we start just from maybe here to right to left.
Look, we have...
It's a market also.
It is also like smart cities, like we're talking about it like in very like specific terms. It is also a market, right? And there's like a lot of people like looking to bring like services and products into this, right? So look, we are like as a company, like for, you know, a fast-growing small company, like about 300 people at this point. We do have office in Shanghai. We have an office in Bangalore. Building the office in Bangalore experienced like what traffic really looks like. Myself, pretty familiar with that. We have a lot of learning to do here. I think for us as a company, I think this is like the first thing that comes to my mind. Like you're working currently like with 3 actually Western cities in smart cities initiatives. We're going to like do a new call, and I would love, and if there's somebody like in the audience here, you know, who's like connected to like, you know, a city in an emerging market, would love to work in the next round with also like a very fast-growing like city in an emerging market.
Can I just jump in very quickly, because there's one topic we really haven't touched on, which I do think is useful in these growing cities. It's the role of sort of heavy infrastructure and rail to carry mass numbers of people. And I think that, because I think that's really what the solution's got to be for these developing cities. I mean, it has to be for London. We couldn't get the people to the places they need to get to without it. And the other cities need to think about it. So, but what's then, how do you fit into this from a tech point of view? Think about new technology and how you can incorporate it into the, sort of this heavy, the heavy rail systems. It's not an easy challenge because you have a establishment of sort of suppliers in that market, but think about that as well as a sort of the driving around that you see sort of today in Tel Aviv. It's a different world in certain cities. Heavy rail has got to be part of the solution. So, off my soapbox.
So to connect with what Lauren said, I think that what we would like to see is more and more projects from governments and cities getting funded, building use cases for each type of location, because it's not only about the congestion in one city, it's also a cultural thing. Like you said, in Bangalore, there's different driving culture than in London. And we participate now in 3 different cities, projects that are being funded by the government to learn how we can take the technologies that we as companies develop and take them to the market, to the mass market as solutions. So it's projects that start now and probably going to end in 2 years can provide solutions for what we're facing right now.
All right.
To touch on your point, infrastructure is so expensive. And that's one of the biggest challenges of growing cities, to get the capital and the time it takes for subway. And sometimes you have to have these subway systems and heavy rail to really move millions of people a day. In New York, for example, you can't put in 8 million people going into Manhattan above ground. Just will never work, whatever technology or efficient system you have. However, you might, maybe an analogy that could be interesting, you know, in many developing countries, you had no communication, and then you had the cell phone, right? We skipped the landline. And what we believe is if you use these data infrastructures, mapping tools, AI systems, network operation optimization systems like VIA, you can build without any infrastructure, because all the infrastructure is data or some cloud platform somewhere on a computer, nobody knows exactly where it is, and you can create a mass transit solution within days. And that's something that I think could be extremely helpful for the dynamically evolving cities in developing worlds.
Actually, I think ACIS Capital USA maybe invest in your company.
I'm not sure that's public knowledge, but today it is. Yeah. Since today it is, so we are partners. Thank you.
What we are talking about is the efficiency. For us, you know, for the customer, actually it's related to the low cost, high quality, quick delivery, and the good service. You know, the customer will choose. They don't care it's public or private service. It's just they choose the service. So that's what we are thinking about is, you know, from our study that if you control the vehicle very well, the driver is perfect. Actually, they shouldn't be a rush hour in the city, because rush hour due to the people's driving behavior. It's not because of too many vehicles. It's because of you drive fast, slow, cause the tide of the movement of the fleet. So what we are thinking about is maybe in the future that we can, right now, you know, SIC just invest a map company, because we think we can use, based on map, we can use this for the more intelligent vehicle, the more intelligent fleet. Then we can control the tide of the vehicles. So we want to provide a more efficient service to customer, and we want to get more profit. That's the business.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of this panel. You see, it's a very complex issue. Cities and smart cities are not only about smart mobility, but smart cities is a much broader, overarching issue. Talking about my city in Munich, it's about energy, it's about inclusion, it's mobility for everyone, affordable 24/7, also in areas where maybe not so many people live. So it's a very big societal issue, which is very differently treated in different places of the world. I think we have seen that technology, as in the last panel, is not the biggest challenge, because you all would say, no problem, we have the solutions. But decision-making, real behavior of people is the issue, and that needs policy. So I would suggest to the organizers of this event here in Tel Aviv, maybe next time to have a panel and a discussion where we deepen the relation between, let's say, the vision of a city, the policy framework, and the technology, because I understood from your presentations you're ready to make contributions, but you're asking sometimes maybe for funding to start that, but sometimes also for a clear picture, where does the city A or B wants to go, and not only to say, okay, we're going to make a test. And I think this is a message that we can take from here to all the mayors in the city, in saying the solutions are there. Open up for cooperation, invite people there, and have a clear opinion what you want to achieve, and then you're going to find the right people. So thank you, and thank you to the panel.